the controls over to the attorney. I want to say doctor. I'm gonna put that in the universe. Dr. Craig Carson. I'm gonna put that in the universe. So Craig, come on up to the stage and good morning there, brother. Thank you
Read it.
for, thank you. Ah, Grand Rising. Thank you for answering the bell. We really, really appreciate that because we know how busy, well, everybody who we ask is really, really busy. So we don't take that for granted. So thank you for agreeing to be the moderator of this upcoming panel, which we have dubbed Knowing and Protecting Your Rights. So Craig, I hand the controls over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the great remarks of both yourself and our former great mayor, Mayor Johnson. And so my opening statement will be the following. The rights of the people have always been like air in America. It's our birthright, our natural right, and it's only right that we pursue our freedom and liberty through rights. The pursuit of rights led to the colonists away from the gripping hand of British imperialism, enslaved humans to be reborn through the Jubilee moments of Juneteenth in Galveston, Texas, that pushed Thomas Mundy Peterson to cast the first black vote in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, inspired Claudette Colvin in March 2nd, 1954, to refuse to give up a seat because that was her right, long before Rosa came around and did the same thing. For Alicia Garza, Patrice McCullers, Opal Tometi of the Black Lives Matter movement to finish realizing the freedoms that others and ancestors before them had looked to accomplish and the rights of the people of color that had to live and just be free. Um, Being the town of Austin Stewart, Rochester, New York, here, where we are, where we're situated, where ABC is, in the home of Susan B. Anthony, the fight movement led by the great Franklin Florence, in the home of Connie Mitchell as well, Mildred Johnson, Dr. Walter Cooper. We are a people that know about fighting for our rights, fighting for freedom, fighting for liberation. My name, as stated earlier, by the great Jerome Underwood, is Craig Diallo Carson, local attorney and activist. I'll be your moderator for today's Knowing and Protecting Your Rights panelist discussion. And with no further intros, colorful or flowery language, let's get it popping. So we have four panelists today. And if we can go in the order that I'm going to provide of folks giving a 30-second introduction to who you are, your organization, just a little bit about yourself, that will be great. So if we can have Dr. Leslie Myers Small go first, that would be great.
Thank you, Craig, and good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. As was shared, my name is Dr. Leslie Myers Small, and I proudly serve as the Executive Director for the Police Accountability Board for the City of Rochester. We are certainly living in a time and a place where people are feeling unsettled, and so it is important for us to know the law. We have to challenge injustice, and we have to build systems that honor dignity instead of fear. And that's what our organization really helps to do. We were created by a 75% vote of the Rochester community back in 2019. And our pillars are accountability and transparency. So I lead the efforts to work in concert with the Rochester Police Department and to make sure that they're held accountable and that their actions are transparent. So, Craig and the rest of my esteemed panelists and those who are participating, my hope today is simple. I want us to leave more informed, more grounded, and more determined, not only to demand justice, but to design it. Because when communities know their power, systems change. And when systems change, people are safer, they're freer, and they're seen. Thank you.
Ashe, sounds great. So on to the next in our second panelist, Dr. Rashid, I think it's Rashid, brother. Correct me if I'm wrong. Rashid Muhammad.
Greetings to everyone. Greetings of peace. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be on the panel today. As Dr. Carson mentioned, I'm Dr. Rashid Mohammed. My current position is the Director of Community Partnerships for Just Cause. Just Cause as an organization is one of four partners in the Teleska Center for Justice that provides civil legal representation for those who cannot afford those types of things and for matters outside of criminal nature that you are guaranteed an attorney. My background, I'm a Rochester kid, as I like to say. My life was greatly informed by living down the street from Mayor Johnson. As a child, Reverend John Walker, my own father, Judge Roy King, and others that shaped me greatly in this journey. Subsequent to going to city schools, went on to serve over 20 years as an Air Force officer and came back to do community work here. So thank you for this opportunity to be in these spaces with all of you to live and learn.
Ashe, Ashe, brother. Thank you, brother Muhammad. And we will move on to our third panelist, a legal colleague of mine, a powerhouse in the legal community, and a nice guy too. My concise intro for Brian Hetherington.
Thank you, Craig. And I also would like to thank ABC for putting on this conference and inviting me to participate. I'm a retired anti-poverty attorney. I worked at Empire Justice Center, one of the four partners in the Teleska Center with Just Cause, where Dr. Muhammad works, and also a Rockingham Street neighbor of former neighbor of Bill Johnson and Rashid's family. Um, I kind of went into the law and went to law school to try to end poverty, and worked through my entire career for civil legal services programs that tried to make life more fair and the economic system more fair for low income people, people of color, and that good work has been incredibly rewarding. But obviously, as Mayor Johnson has keyed up, we are in very tough times where the gains in rights are being cut back day by day in all of the fields. So I really welcome the opportunity to be part of a conversation about what we can do about it. What is clear to me is that doing nothing is not an acceptable response in this time.
Well said. I like that ending piece. Um, and as for our fourth panelist, we have the great Dr. Ashley Cross.
Good morning. It is such an honor to be included in such a powerful and necessary conversation. My name is Dr. Ashley Cross. I am the founding executive director of Hope 585, in which our mission is to create a relationship-centered community for marginalized youth and families, mainly those that are impacted by the Child Protective Service or by child welfare. And our vision is to see our city restored. And we believe that that happens when we can move families from a place of systemic trauma to power and belonging. Um, we began working specifically with children and families that were already involved in the child welfare system. A lot of young people who are in foster care, preparing to age out of foster care. And over the last couple of years, we've really explored what we want our legacy in this community to be, where we want to focus. And we have began to expand a lot of our program services and focus on family preservation. Me personally, I am a third generation foster parent. Everyone in my family has done foster care, but I have decided that I would like to spend the rest of my career and even the rest of my life, to be honest, working to fight for family preservation and systems change within the child welfare system.
Very nice. Now we have our panelists installed and we're ready to begin. As you guys know, we gotta have a few ground rules. And so those rules are as follows. We have approximately 3 questions for each person. We will look through the chat just to see if there are some comments and questions that we can offer to the panelists. And then separately, for each reply, because we know everyone, has a prodigious mind, deep insights, and lots to share and offer, we do have to be respectful, of course, of both the issues, the discussion, as well as everyone's time. So perhaps 3-minute replies. I guess you got an internal clock that'll time your reply or whatever. You can figure out what that looks like for you. But yes, please, 3-minute replies for each question. And I will ask questions in kind of the order that you did your intros. So it gives you a sense of perhaps when you'll be going next. So with that being said, first person is Dr. Leslie Myers Small. And this is the question that the people collectively put together. If anyone believes their rights were violated, what should be their very first move? Not second, but first move. And what mistakes should they avoid? Should they absolutely avoid?
Thank you for that question. So, when someone believes their rights have been violated, really the first priority is safety, because I certainly know that Miss Moore yesterday did not believe that her life was going to end in Minneapolis. So we know it's in the moment, I know that we want to advocate, but it's not about winning the argument per se, respectfully, in my opinion. It's about staying alive, it's about staying calm, and it's about getting back home. So once you are safe, the most important next step is documentation, because details fade very quickly. We can't remember everything that has happened. So you can either write down everything that you remember that happened or say it into your phone. Who was involved? What was said? If law enforcement were involved, get badge numbers, patrol car numbers, and if possible, locations, street names, or addresses on the street, witnesses, and timelines. If there are injuries, photograph them and seek immediate medical care. And if video footage exists, make sure you back that up. From there, the goal is to shift into accountability, into formal systems. So you can file a complaint. You could do that with organizations like mine, the Police Accountability Board. There are civil rights attorneys. The RPD does have their professional standards section, which is their internal affairs, and follow the process through. So some of the biggest mistakes that people make is they try to debate constitutional rights on the sidewalk. Um, and so that can quickly lead to a downward spiral. Physically resisting even when they believe that they are right. And here's one that is very common: posting everything immediately on social media before reporting it, waiting too long, and losing details or evidence. And so we want people to understand that your safety comes first. And I understand about advocating for your rights, but sometimes you have a situation where people don't want to hear that, they're not listening. So you want to make sure that you document everything. And then when you document effectively, the accountability can happen afterwards. So there are structured systems that are designed to investigate and correct the harm. And for oversight organizations like the Police Accountability Board, our job is to ensure that people are not only heard, but their experiences, their lived experiences, and their voice leads to policy change, because we have the ability to do that. It leads to better training, and it builds stronger trust. Thank you.
Absolutely superb. And I like the piece about documentation. As an attorney, I tell people all the time, you got to make sure that you're present in the moment. You pay attention to what can be observed, put into, the proper form of evidence.
Yes.
And then, and I won't go into this too deeply, but the rules of evidence is something that folks
Yep.
should Google search, because in court or in a hearing, not everything's admissible. So just a little footnote. We'll put that to the side for the moment.
Thank
So
you.
we have our next speaker for question purposes, Dr. Muhammad. What are the key milestones of events and court cases in American history that are the foundation of current inequitable laws, policies, and social conventions.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. And again, it's a pleasure to be in these spaces. My brief remarks would be prefaced by what I call a theme: learning, leveraging, and leading from the lessons that those of us that preceded us. And as I have mentioned, my life has been greatly shaped by Mayor Johnson and other those that I literally grew up by. And so, what I'm getting to offer now as an answer to that question is some brief exemplars or examples of 3 or 4 different periods: colonial period, antebellum period, race relations period, etc. As Mayor Johnson laid out, these things are not abstractions of a distant past. They are the foundation of the very issues that we are leading through. So very briefly, some of the things in the shape or the beginning of our nation that we are being familiar with: 1619, slaves coming in, 1770, the Boston Massacre, the first person to die for our country, Crispus Attucks, the Declaration of Independence in 1776, which we are celebrating and looking at, but many do not know that Thomas Jefferson actually wrote into the Declaration of Independence condemning slave trade, but it was removed at the behest of Southern colonies to keep their hegemony and economic strength. The U.S. Constitution was adopted in 1789, and it had as 3/5 of a person for slaves as representation, and then very quickly to other things: the Missouri Compromise, the Fugitive Slaves Acts of 1793, 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Dred Scott Act. Every one of these things leaded up to the foundation of our country was built on chattel slavery. Chattel slavery informed everything, all these steps: how our states came in, how our government was shaped, and how we went into a Civil War period. Subsequent to the Civil War, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which have fundamentally altered the Constitution, were based on the outcome of slavery and doing away with it. And then when we move into later periods, where we see the undoing of Plessy versus Ferguson, other court cases that start to undo the rights: 1898 massacre in Wilmington, North Carolina, taking out a elected government. Some of the things that we're seeing today, as the mayor mentioned, with great intentionality and ruthlessness, are just a repetition of what has happened in the past: the undoing of Reconstruction, the undoing of civil rights laws and things that were passed in the 50s and 60s. Many are familiar with Brown versus the Board of Education, but I do ask, and of course, I tend to go into these things in the professorial role. How many people are familiar with Milliken versus Bradley, a court case that me and Mr. Hetherington talk about a lot? Essentially and thoroughly undid Brown versus the Board of Education. So now that we have schools that are more segregated today. So as I go through these historical things, I offer them not as a history lesson, but as markers and outlines of how our nation has been shaped and the problems we're dealing with today. Thank you.
Sorry about that little sound issue. Dr. Muhammad, that's superb. I appreciate that. And I did want to add a little footnote because, that's what moderators often do. Ida B. Wells, very important person for kind of providing a foundation in our liberation to push back against these foundations and vestiges of, let's say, colonialism or racism or that kind of take away from our rights. And so her investigative kind of anti-racist and lynching work is superb, and actually recognizes kind of one of the first journalistic approaches in activism. And I think when we offer, things like that, that type of activism to cut away, at the culture of colonialism within America, I think we are able to chop down those problems and get free and exercise our rights in a way that's liberating to all. Moving on to our third panelist's first question. Brian Hetherington, the first question for you, sir, is given the efforts at the federal level to cut back on our rights, what can we do to push back?
Well, initially, we need to take action. Audre Lorde said to refuse to participate in shaping our future is to give it up. Do not be misled into passivity either by the false security, they don't really mean me, or by despair, there's nothing we can do. Each of us must find our work and do it. And collectively, ultimately, we need to change who the decision makers are. This rollback of rights that is currently occurring is a result of who we have elected and appointed to critical positions in our government. And it will take concerted action across the nation and throughout our state to try to roll that back, their attempts to roll back rights. It's important to understand that while things are difficult at a federal level, states and cities can create rights for their citizens. In New York and the government of the city of Rochester have done so. And we are going to need to encourage our state representatives and our city representatives to step up and fill some of the gaps that the federal government has abdicated responsibility to deal with. So there's a lot of work that can be done. I think it's really important to remember that in the last presidential election, a third of the people who were eligible to vote never came out and voted. So, that's the whole passivity piece. We need to get informed, decide whose vision of the future is most compelling to us, um, not get distracted by the shiny and also often false promises that are made, and look at what people's past records have been, and then go out and do our civil duty as the mayor has reminded us.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And those voices are critical, and we always have to continue to push. No question that we have a lot of assemblymen and senators that are definitely, very upfront, willing to listen to our voices. And I think we always need to connect, between us and them. Now next question, we have Dr. Ashley Cross. It is our understanding that you have been doing some work around mandated court reporting. Please give a brief synopsis of the work that you've been doing and tell us some of the ways mandated reporters can reduce harm to families when they need to make a report for alleged neglect or abuse.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, Hope 585 launched an initiative called the Reimagine Initiative that was focusing on narrowing the front door to child protective services. And within about a year, we had 8 different design sessions working to co-design solutions together, both with helping professionals. So we had about 40 helping professionals, as well as 15 impacted parents who came together month after month, working on a solution to narrowing the front door to CPS. And out of the initiative, we were able to form some partnerships with the schools and community-based organizations in some of our highest reporting neighborhoods. Also, we have been a part of the New York State Mandated Reporting Work Group, which is made up of advocates, mandated reporters, and impacted parents from across the state. This group is working on a bill called the Supporting Families Together Act, which seeks to remove some of the penalties associated with mandated reporters who choose to support families in other ways outside of calling the hotline. This would help our laws be more consistent with the new OCFS language in their training that is explicitly encouraging supporting over reporting when we're talking about issues that are related to poverty and not real abuse or neglect. In our community alone, we see about 7,000 reports that are made to the SCR each year, and 66% of those are made by helping professionals who are typically well-intended mandated reporters who want to serve children and families. And when mandated reporters feel like they need to make a call to the SCR, many have stated that that is a very difficult decision for them to make. We understand that there are also children and families in our community who are encountering very complex situations in which mandated reporters do have the legal obligation to report to the SER. And when that happens, the goal should be for the mandated reporter to make the call while also attempting to remain connected to the child and their families. One of the ways in which we can reduce the harm to families is by ensuring that they know and that they understand their rights when undergoing a CPS investigation. They also have access to the Family Defense Unit through the Monroe County Public Defender's Office. For years, there has been some legislation called the Family Miranda Bill that has not been passed, and this bill would require for CPS workers, much like law enforcement, to provide parents with a copy of their rights, both verbal and written. And just because that bill has not been passed, doesn't mean that we cannot still do work within our community to ensure that families understand and they know their rights when undergoing a CPS investigation. That is one of the ways in which we believe that harm can be reduced, is when the report is made and you're still connecting with the youth and the family, and ensuring that they understand their rights.
Oh, gotta ask a sub question because I work with the CPS issue, but particularly a public defender's office a lot. Ashley, are you aware whether or not the public defender's office just itself has decided to take initiative on any know your rights stuff? I understand there's a
They
bill
do.
work.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll be sharing directly from the public defenders. They have a list of rights that they do give out, and they ensure that parents know, but they also do trainings in which we can work with community-based organizations and making that connection with the public defender's office to ensure that they can come into your organization to do a Know Your Rights training.
Very well. Thank you, ma'am.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
Dr. Leslie Myers Small, we are back to you. And I think this next question actually connects to something that you said in your initial answer. And it had a lot to do with kind of not getting caught up in the moment too much and losing the opportunity to kind of fight later in a more efficient way. But so the question is, how do we teach community members the difference between boldly standing their rights and wisely stepping back to stay safe?
Thank you for that question. So I often say that knowing your rights is power, and knowing when and how to use them is wisdom. And so just think about that for just a second. So standing in your rights does not have to look confrontational, even though I know that certain systems and certain agencies, if they see a certain skin color, right, or if the language is not English, or if it's anything other than what has been described as the norm, or typical, right, that can immediately evoke confrontation. But confrontation, I mean, standing in your rights can look like this. Officer, I do not consent to a search. I would like to remain silent at this time. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Right? Just asking clear, concise, direct to the point types of questions. But they're not only are they clear and calm, but they're protective. But there are moments when the safest thing to comply is to comply physically, even while verbally keeping your rights intact. Let me say that again. Physically complying, but verbally keeping your rights intact. And so that might sound like, I am going to comply right now, but I am not waiving my rights. I refuse to waive my rights. So it's important for the Rochester community to understand that courage is not escalation. Dignity can coexist with caution, and you can protect yourself and still pursue justice later. And so at the Police Accountability Board, and Dr. Cross, I definitely need to sit with you. We are like overdue. So let me put that little plug in real quick. Um, we teach through outreach. We do education workshops. We walk the streets. We've walked the streets with, for example, the Father Tracy House. We've built a very strong partnership and relationship with Urban League and with ABC and Ibero. We have conversations with individuals, and it's not centered on fear, but it's centered on preparation and education and people just understanding. we have had an intentional focus on young people, but what we've discovered is that some adults don't even understand. Like, do I have to produce my license, right? If I'm asked, like, what exactly are my rights as it relates to interaction with law enforcement? Um, and I will be sharing in the chat the QR code to actually our brochure that talks about knowing your rights and the different resources that are available. But not only is outreach and education important, but oversight plays an important role here too. When residents step back to stay safe, they need to trust that there is a process that is fair. Can I say that again for those who are standing in the back? That is fair, that is transparent, and that it's real. So, our responsibility, right, at the Police Accountability Board in this case, is to ensure that the trust is warranted. So, that's my response to that.
Much appreciated. A few things. Sometimes when people, at least when they get pulled over, they'll actually ask for a supervisor because
Hmm.
I guess maybe to make sure the situation is being handled right without bias or whatever the case may be. What exactly are our rights in terms of that, or what's your understanding of
You
um,
can,
if we're
yep, you can say I'd like to have an additional individual here. You can also remind them that they have body worn camera footage. I have seen that you have not turned on your camera. And what people don't know in Rochester, there's a 30-second delay before you can start hearing something. So be mindful of that, right? So you can pause, say, I want to wait just a moment, right? Part of what the issue is that we get emotional, we tend to escalate, and then that escalates the other side. And so you can record interactions. A lot of people do that. We've received information that way. You have the right to do that. Can't wave that in the officer's face, but you can say, I'm going to record this for my safety and for my protection.
last sub question on this particular point. If a woman is being confronted by police, does a woman have a right to ask for a woman officer?
You can ask for it, but you might not be granted it. You can ask for that, right? Because we know not only just might be a comfort level, but there could be some religious connotations like there, right? Around the interaction. But if we don't know that we can ask these things, therefore not. That's a great question.
Great answers. For all of my people, attendees out there in ABC panel land, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. There's a feature at the bottom of your app where you can ask questions. We would love to hear them, and that would definitely fuel this discussion. Moving on to Dr. Muhammad. How are historic de jure actions sustaining and increasing current systemic inequities? And why is it important to understand these dynamics?
Thank you, Dr. Carson. And at the end of the previous question, you mentioned Ida B. Wells, and I'll use her as an example of why it is important. Um, as Dr. Myers-Small just mentioned, in the moment, frequently when things happen, we're paying directly attention to that, as we should. And a lot of times those things are imbued with emotion and danger, frankly. But if we do not have the structure or the understanding of what brought us to these moments, we cannot undo the root causes of them over a sustained period of time in order to make change. First example I would give is if I were to offer to have a conversation about the Articles of Secession from the Confederacy or the state redeemer constitutions where the southern states came back into the United States. What does that have to do with the work that Dr. Leslie Myers Small is doing and Dr. Cross is doing on a daily basis? Those particular documents, force of law, de jure, as opposed to people's behaviors, opinions, those types of things, but these are laws, structures, and policies, led to the formation of the Great Migration of African Americans leaving, which then led to the urban areas of northern and western states being populated by African Americans. Subsequently, we had redlining, school segregation, all those types of things, concentrated poverty, which led right to the things that we're doing. But if we do not, again, go back in time and understand what are the structures that are creating and sustaining and holding these things in place, whether they are intended to do or not. For the last question, but I'll jump ahead a little bit. Um, have we, as a people or the group of people, as a town, as a city, as a county, have we read the United States Constitution? Do we understand the United States Constitution? Have we read the New York State Constitution with the preamble and 20 articles? Those things are absolutely essential to what happens on our daily life. As lawyers, I know that you and of course Mr. Hetherington are very familiar with those documents. But if we don't do the two things that have historically been forbidden for us. What could people get in trouble with the times of slavery, both black and white? What has been done repeatedly? One is stopping people to learn and be educated, and stopping people from voting. And as Brian said, when we have a third of the people capitulating voting, where we have a lot of challenges around education, those types of things, we need to pay attention to that and understand the history. Thanks.
You're welcome, brother. You're very welcome. Quick sub question. If you could briefly share with us the difference between, or what definitions of, and the difference between de facto and de jure as it relates to laws in the American legal system.
Thank you very much. De jure, accurate, distinctly put, is those things that are formal. When we adopt things in the Constitution, when we have laws, for instance, like when the Plessy Ferguson came and said separate but equal, that is a force of law and policy that is being done by the government in a formal sense to create and sustain inequities. De facto, often many of our conversations and actions are based on de facto things, people's biases, personal opinions, their personal behavior, as opposed to the formal and systemic types of things that continue to move forward. Prior to the last election, you heard about something called Project 2025. Project 2025 laid out very clearly a game plan to address the de jure structures and dismantle them or change them. As Mayor Johnson very eloquently put, if we pay attention to those types of things, what are being done, we'll see a historical repetition and making it a distinction that both things are important to understand. Systems, structures, policies, and laws, and then also people's behaviors, opinions, and personal experiences. But I put out a plea to co-equally understand those things that are structures, policy, and laws. I know most people don't want to sit around reading your New York State Constitution like I do, but those things are indeed important.
So we do have what I believe is a comment from the Q&A section from one of our attendees, Miss Antoinette. And the comment, I think, comes as a bit of a response to, some of the narrative for Dr. Leslie Myers Small. And that comment is, escalation comes from trauma that we as the public have seen to be unjust. So what happens after that? Then what? It anyone can respond to this, but I think this more so comes out of the wheelhouse of Dr. Leslie Myers Small. So, Dr. Small, if you want to take a crack at that, that'd be great, and then we'll move on to Mr. Hetherington after that.
Absolutely. We have seen far too much trauma, right, happened. When the Daniel Prude situation happened in Rochester, I was superintendent at the time, and I had staff who were protesting. I had students as young as elementary age students protesting. And so we have to take and make the time to acknowledge the trauma and create the spaces to do so. So, we certainly have done that. We've created spaces. Faith institutions need to create these spaces, and we need to allow people to talk about what's going on, to share their frustrations. When we held a town hall, for example, with Mr. Robert Ricks and regarding Robert Brooks, we actually had trained social workers and counselors of color come in, and they were available to talk with folks, because we see so many things through our eye gate, and it is very traumatic. So that's another resource that we provide to individuals that if you have experienced something, if you've seen something, here are some resources, here are some places that you can go to get that help. That's a very, very real situation, and I really do appreciate the question, Antoinette.
Yep, definitely a good question. So I've been an activist for 15 years, and one of the things that I know to be true is that people get burnt out. People have issues with each other. They may have issues at home. They may have whatever issues that kind of takes away from that fight aspect. And I think now that we're in kind of an era that seems to be more embracing and be more sensitive to and interested in the mental health, let's say, sphere, if you will. I think we need to consider that to be important to the struggle that, just like let's say some guy that's in a football game, he goes out, he does whatever he does in the field, and he rests and he heals, he
Sure.
puts ice pack on, he drinks some water or whatever the case may be. And there is the kind of that cycle. And I think
Mhm.
in a way, we look at history and we see like a lot of the fighting. We see a lot of people kind of struggling, if you will, or fighting for freedom, but I don't know that those narratives, at least most of us, have really seen the other side of let's heal, let's kind of get ourselves together, and make sure we're kind of good and healed before we go back into any pushback fight or what have you.
And
Uh,
Dr. Carson, can I just say this quickly and piggyback? Because in communities of color, particularly, getting help was a sign of weakness. It's a sign of you don't, I remember when I was told growing up, you don't share any of our family business with school. You don't share it with anyone. And so we have to continue to normalize the fact that there are times that we do need help, and that's why it's important equally to have practitioners and therapists, counselors, social workers, psychologists who look like us, who have that experience where we don't have to go through and translate everything, right? And say, this is what I meant when I said, let's get to it, right? But we have to normalize in our community that getting help and seeking help um, is okay, and that it's important to do that. And particularly for those who are caregivers, because you can experience caregiver burnout. I've experienced it myself.
Dave?
May I also offer quickly, as we are tapping into those very, very needed resources, that we have a deep remembrance and understanding. We are a people of strength. African Americans have survived slavery, Jim Crow, some of the worst horrors that have been visited upon people. We're not weak. We are very strong, both intellectually and emotionally. And I think we need to also have that narrative there that we're coming from a position of strength as well.
Yep. I don't want to say too much, but that's the Sankofa moment, If we know our past, then we'll be good and kind of moving forward into our future. We're better for it. Go back and get it. Leave it at that. And this connects well to the second question for our third panelist, who is Brian Hetherington. And the question is, if I or someone I know has been hurt by changes in their rights, who should I contact to see if they can help?
So I'm a lawyer, and so it probably won't surprise any of you that I'm going to suggest that probably the first place you want to go is to consult with a lawyer. And one of the terrific things in our community is that we have made it somewhat easier to access those resources. And it's important to do so because often what people are telling you, in power are telling you about your rights, is not necessarily true. And a lot of what the federal government is doing, they're doing pursuant to what they have called emergencies. But as courts have begun to look at these emergencies, a number of courts have said, well, you really have not proved that there's a real emergency here. And so what you're doing is not necessarily something you can do. but it takes lawyers to do that. Now, locally, if you have a problem, you can contact any of the organizations at the Teleska Center for Justice, and that's the Legal Aid Society, Just Cause, where Dr. Mohammed works, Empire Justice, where I used to work, and Legal Assistance of Western New York, which is the former Monroe County Legal Assistance Corporation, the federally funded civil legal service program, which, by the way, ABC was one of the initial sponsors of. And it doesn't matter which one you call, you actually get the same team of receptionists who then plug you in to the organization that can best help you. And then there are specialty organizations. There's Disability Rights New York that deals with rights for people with intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities. There is the civil side of the Public Defender's Office, which deals with child protective and kinds of uh, cases. There's Farm Workers Legal Services that protects the rights of farm workers, and then there are organizations like the Genesee Valley chapter of the New York Civil Liberties Union, who deal with civil liberties kinds of cases. So there are a variety of organizations. They coordinate reasonably well together so that we can try to provide, one-stop shopping or at least two-stop shopping to people to get them connected to people who can help. And I think that is as Attorney Carson has sort of indicated in the beginning, a lot of these things are relatively, fact-based and need some analysis to figure out, okay, is there a provable case here? But it's really important when you think that your rights have been violated that you don't just sit there and take it, because that's what they would like you to do. And why would you want to cooperate with your oppressors?
Indeed. What inquiring minds want to know, Mr. Hetherington, is what are the costs for these services?
Well, the great thing is that all of the services that I've listed are absolutely free. Not even sliding scale; they're absolutely free. And of course, there are private attorneys if you are a person of means and whatnot. These organizations, at least for most of the types of cases they handle, have income guidelines, but some, like Disability Rights New York, don't at all. They have a narrow focus, but within that focus, they don't have income guidelines at all.
So sub question as usual, because you are the president of the Monroe County Bar Association at one point in time, correct?
Once upon a time, yep.
So if you could just share a little bit about how they fit within the realm of the answer for this question.
Sure. So the Monroe County Bar Association, along with our colleague associations, the Rochester Black Bar Association and the Greater Rochester Association for Women Attorneys, have all been highly supportive of the civil legal services providers, of the public defender's office. They recruit volunteers for Just Cause, where Dr. Mohammed works, and those volunteers provide free civil legal services. And they have stood up on issues of public policy that affect the law. And the three bar associations have a joint committee on racial justice that puts on programs and tries to make sure that Attorneys are aware of issues in the community. There will be a program in later January, I believe it's January 21st, on immigration rights that the joint committee of the three bars is putting on. So there is a fair amount that the organized bar is doing to try to push back on some of the overreach and attempts to reduce rights. And I think there's another really important thing, and that is the current administration is trying to cut back rights in two different ways. One, just repealing rights, right? And saying, well, you just don't have a right to this or that or the other thing. The second is removing remedies. Because, if there's no remedy, then there really is no right. And to try to make it harder to get people to exercise the right. And particularly on that second one, the bar associations have been vigilant to try to make sure that people's rights to exercise the rights that they have don't get cut back.
Brian, so the list of organizations that you mentioned, the Bar Association would have a lot of those. So
they would have all of them, and the Teleska Center organizations have all of them. So you could reach out to any one of those, the Bar Association or any one of the Teleska Center organizations, to get information on what's available in the community.
very nice. And so as usual, I'll add a footnote. So there also is the help desk in
Yes.
the Hall of Justice, run by two people that have been dedicated for years. It's the same two people have been, added and devoted, and they really help a lot of people. It is on the fifth floor of the Hall of Justice. If you have questions about eviction or questions about, let's say an estates matter, whatever. The people at the help desk on the fifth floor, it's kind of hard to describe where it is on the fifth floor. I'll just leave it at
Right.
that.
Yeah,
But
two of those people are Just Cause employees, and it's co-man with Just Cause and the court staff. So that could be an example of the information that we could share a public how that's a great example you just gave.
Right.
Those partnerships. Yep.
yes,
And
sir.
there's an information table for people facing eviction on the first floor of the Hall of Justice, outside the courtroom where eviction cases are held. And again, staffed by folks from the Teleska Center partners, and people who are potentially facing eviction who haven't connected yet, can come and connect with them. There are days when people from the Department of Human Services are also present. So if the reason for the eviction is that you need financial services, or your financial services have been wrongly cut off, those things can get dealt with again in a one-stop sort of a way from that desk.
Absolutely. And last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on to Dr. Cross for question two, is one thing I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of is the law library that is at 50 East Avenue. That's
Yep.
right. 50 East Avenue. So 50 East Avenue and Chestnut. That law library has infinite resources. The people there, they're always willing to help you. They're extremely nice. They're very kind. To be honest with you, I think they get bored because I don't think a lot of people come in there. They'll print out cases for you. You can go on the computer, use the legal databases that, let's say, the rest of the law world uses and relies on, like Westlaw. You can use these things for free. I think there's a cost for like printing things, but nonetheless, they'll let you look through all the same information and research and books and so on and so treatises, for free. So, but there's certain days you have to go there. I forget what the hours are, but folks should definitely, that's to me, that's very much an untapped resource. It's very powerful. So folks should consider that to be on that resource list. But moving on, Dr. Ashley Cross, this is the second question I have for you. What do families need to know if they are under investigation by CPS?
Yeah, so I want to begin by echoing some of the sentiments of Dr. Myers Small when she's talked about being calm and non-confrontational. I think that that also applies when dealing with CPS. I also believe that it's very important to comply with the investigation while also knowing and exercising your rights. And so parents have the right to speak to an attorney before speaking to a CPS worker. And again, here in Monroe County, we're very fortunate to have a very amazing family defense unit through the Monroe County Public Defender's Office. They also have the right to know the specific allegations that have been made against them. And that's very important that they stop and ask, what are the specifics around the allegations? And they do not have to answer any questions that are unrelated to those allegations. So, for example, if the allegation is lack of food, clothing, and shelter, for an example, the family does not need to, or the parent does not need to answer questions that are maybe regarding substance use. That question is unrelated to the actual allegation of lack of food, clothing, and shelter. And so stick to answering questions that are related to the allegation, but they first have the right to know what the allegation is. Families can also deny CPS workers entry into their home, although this does not stop the investigation. Again, even though it's a right, it's left up to the family to decide if that is the best thing to do in that moment. But they do not have to allow for them to enter into their home. In some cases, CPS may have to go and then apply for a court or through the court for an access order. And so a family, again, if they don't want to let CPS into their home, they can ask them to go and to apply for an access order through the courts, which would allow CPS with police assistance to enter into their home. And so these are some of the rights. The family can also, they can decline consent to drug testing, drug evaluation, mental health evaluations. If they, again, do not feel like it actually is related to the allegations, they don't have to do those evaluations. And they can also refuse to sign any type of release or consent forms that would give CPS access to confidential information.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Cross. All right, we're coming back around to Dr. Leslie Myers Small. What emerging trends are reshaping civil and human rights right now? And who is the most vulnerable if we aren't paying attention? There's actually a second question, so I'll just start with that part of the question.
Sure. We're living in a moment where technology, policy shifts, and social tensions are intersecting in very powerful and meaningful ways. So there are three trends that are very deeply concerning to me right now. And the first, and I'm sure I'll get nods, is surveillance technology. So drones, cameras. We've just recently in our neck of the woods, Wegmans, right, with what they're doing to huge amounts of data that are being collected on us. So in the law enforcement world, these tools certainly can help solve crimes, but they also can track, they can profile, and they can disproportionately affect communities of color, low income neighborhoods. And so that's why privacy protections and oversight matter so much. The second, and we've talked a little bit about this, is mental health, but the intersection part of me with policing. Too many encounters, including Daniel Prude, stem from crisis rather than crime. So when systems of care aren't strong, law enforcement becomes the default response. What's the saying that if I approach every hammer as if it's a nail, all I'm going to do is bring a hammer to it, right? So we use law enforcement to address other issues that they other entities could address. So when we use that hammer, right, that creates risk for both residents, community members, and officers. The third is policy changes that expand, roll back, and then expand again. So, depending on who's in leadership, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, that instability makes it hard for communities to feel secure about their rights. So, who's most impacted? Black and brown communities, young people, individuals with disabilities or those who have mental health conditions, immigrants, the LGBTQIA community, and people who certainly don't have access to legal support. So those are my concerns, and those are the communities who I see are most vulnerable and are the first to be impacted.
All right. Second part of the question is, how have these emerging trends affected PAB's work?
So in a few ways. So we right now, literally as I am speaking on this panel, we have a group of staff who are analyzing how technology is collected and how it's stored, right? And how that impacts the general public. So we're working on looking at systems and trends and patterns, and we're also doing actually a presentation tonight at the board meeting that touches on this. We ask tough questions about privacy and equity, right? Again, information and knowledge is power. So we want to make sure that we translate all of the information is out there and make it easily accessible to the community. I think most critically, we are educating the public about their rights. I'm going to post in the chat a QR code about, it's like about a 8 to 10 page brochure on knowing what your rights are, and particularly as it relates to living in the Rochester and the greater Rochester community. And we push for transparency and accountability as a standard, not as a favor, not as something that's nice to do. It would be great to have, but it's really the standard. Because, and I have to say this from the bottom of my heart and as transparently and honestly as I can say it, police oversight does not exist to attack police and be anti-law enforcement. The goal is to help bring to life our vision, which is reimagining what public safety is looks like in Rochester and particularly, but to build safer, more just, and trusted systems that each individual in the Rochester community feels respected, seen, and heard as a result.
All right. We got a question, but just before we get to that question, I think you mentioned a meeting that was tonight. Is that right?
We're having a board meeting. We have monthly board meetings, the Police Accountability Board, and we actually usually are at our old location, which is 245 East Main Street. I should mention that. We are now located at 57 St. Paul Street, the Loretta Scott Building, but our board meeting is going to be in City Council chambers. It's going to be live streamed on Facebook. And it will also be live streamed on WXXI and it will be played again a week later. So again, I'll put all that information in the chat too. But we have a really good board meeting tonight that touches on some of these topics.
Oh, is that meeting open to the public? To
It
the
is.
extent that it's live,
It
people
is. It's open to
comment.
the public. You have plenty of space in City Council chambers. 30 Church Street.
Okay, very nice. Thank you much. And
You're
we have a
welcome.
question for Dr. Cross. This is from Sister Gladys. How can we reduce the over-reporting of poverty-related concerns by mandated reporters while still ensuring that children experiencing true abuse or neglect are protected? Dr. Cross.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. It's a question that advocates across the state are consistently asking. And I think it starts with really creating spaces, safe spaces for mandated reporters to consult with each other and to brainstorm ways to support families that are at risk of a call to the SCR. I think one thing that's really difficult, and our statutes, our state laws make it difficult, is really defining neglect versus poverty. And that's really challenging to peel back the neglect definition and better understanding what is neglect and what is poverty. And I think mandated reporters have a very challenging job to try to figure out, am I making this call because the family is low income and experiencing poverty, or is this true neglect? And I think that mandated reporters, they need thought partners. They need other mandated reporters that are very engrafted and ingrained in the community. There's some research that shows that the longer time a mandated reporter spends with a family, the less likely they are to call the SER for poverty related concerns because they know the families, they know their needs, they understand what's happening, and they understand that the child is not at danger because the family is experiencing low income. And so I think creating spaces where mandated reporters can consult with each other, can talk, and to ensure that mandated reporters have access to material resources, have access if we understand that one allegation is lack of food, clothing, and shelter, to me that screams low income. It screams poverty. Lack of food, clothing, and shelter is very much linked to income. And so ensuring that mandated reporters have access to food, housing stability, childcare support for families, emergency supports can help with some of that. What happens is when we over-report to the system, very similar to law enforcement, we're overutilizing a tool that wasn't intended to address low income or poverty related needs. And it overwhelms the system, in which the system can no longer function with precision to ensure that children who are really at risk of abuse or are being abused or in imminent danger, ensuring that CPS workers can focus on those children and those families and give them the resources and support and safety that they need. But if we're calling the SER and using CPS as this poverty reduction service, it's we're never going to get the precision that we need within the system to keep children safe who are really at imminent danger.
All right. And since you have some momentum in your responses, Dr. Cross, we got another one for you to bring this to the people. This question was asked. If we could keep this concise, that'd be good. We have a question from Antoinette, which is, are families provided the rights that you mentioned? I think that the public defender's office was attempting to work on. Are they provided those rights prior to a CPS investigation?
No, they're not. So unlike law enforcement, where it's the law that law enforcement give families, or give people a copy of their Miranda rights or say their Miranda rights, that is not. So no, most families are not aware of their rights unless a community-based organization or the public defender's office has given them a copy or explained their rights. But no, CPS is not required by law to give or state the rights to families.
Okay, understandable. And I'll throw 2 cents in real quick. It seems to me that that will be difficult because representation or awareness of these agencies to help someone out, they wouldn't necessarily have attached at that point. Say you get arrested or CPS gets involved, oftentimes you'll then seek out your representative, at that point in time. So perhaps, this is where we encourage everyone and implore everybody to be proactive, and kind of getting a sense like this conference, I guess big up to everybody that's here, but everybody remain proactive in just understanding these rights on a proactive level. So if anything comes up, then you'll be ready, as well as those in your family, your community, and so on and so forth. So those that are here, please spread the word. Please look to teach another person some of this content so we can spread it throughout the community. So we will move on to the third question for Dr. Muhammad. Dr. Muhammad, what resources are recommended to gain knowledge and insight on these topics that we've discussed today? You could come straight from the heart on this one, brother. Whatever comes to mind.
Well, first, what comes to mind, thank you, is elders. People in our community that have been leaders, such as Mayor Johnson, others that are holding significant positions of responsibility. Dr. Myers Small, a school superintendent working at the state level, and the people on this call. So what I mean is learning from those folks. You mentioned Ida B. Wells, working with Chief Cynthia Harriet. Went back and did a lot of reading about Ida B. Wells and what she did, the substance, and also the technique and approach she took. So when you're talking about that, learning from people. Libraries are a tremendous resource. I will share, subsequent to this, a list of recommended reading. There are things like Michelle Alexander, Isabel Wilkerson, Dr. Lauren Hill's books, but there are other things too, things like from Edward Baptiste, Donald Douglas Blackman, other things that are very in-depth about the history and that we can see doing it. So I offer again seeking out the elders in the community to have tremendous knowledge and experience. Two, taking the onus to do self-education with resources in the library. As a kid, I spent my all my time in the Phyllis Wheatley Library and learning through that mix. And then three, making it a priority to encourage other people to be in those circles of learning. Again, we have a lot of things that deal, rightfully so, with trauma, things that are happening in the moment. But I strongly recommend circles of learning. And one thing I'm learning from this conference, certainly the substance of what the speakers are saying, that we need to do a better job of getting information out to the communities of what the resources are. So I think that's part of what I'm taking away from today.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And I will point out that I think Dr. Muhammad brings up a good point. One about, let's say, reaching out to just people in general. Of course, the elders. Of course, in our culture, that's basically the top resource. Let's say behind God. That is, to try to find answers to issues that many of us have dealt with before, and particularly the elders have kind of clashed with issues, so likely they already have a sense of or have outlined the ideas for resolution to some of these issues. But let's say as a big resource that, this city and through lovely Warren's administration put in place the racial and structural equity project, the RISE report. That does seem to have a good amount of this discussion that we're having, provides a lot of details, and outlines both the problem and the solution really well. I know Mayor Johnson had a big hand in that, along with a lot of other people that did great work from the community. So, it is a hefty read. It is quite a read. You might have to break it in pieces, but it definitely has a decent amount of the pathways to the solutions to some of the issues that we're discussing here and more, you
Can I
know?
give a shout out to Dr. Chanel Hawkins and Dr. Candace Lucas, the Urban League leading the CART community advisory resource teams that are implementing the Raise Commission findings. I had the pleasure of working with Chief Harriet for a couple of years on that. And again, a lot of learning, but as you say, tremendous resource documenting those systemic things that need to be looked at. And if we look at the Kerner Commission for racial and disorders from 1967 or 68. It has all the same things that we're dealing with today. All you could take the Raise report and align that. So again, that's why I give a plea to read and understand those things, the cyclical nature, and how we can break those cycles through systemic action.
Absolutely. And if you don't so much feel like reading it, you can always go to people like myself that are extremely wordy and like to share a lot of information and love to answer questions. And perhaps, we could get on the same page or whatnot. And so I do have a quick comment from the Q&A chat from the people. Brother Joe says, thank you for mentioning LGBTQ plus communities among the community members that are very vulnerable. Thank you, Joe, for that comment, because we definitely have you in mind. We always need to be inclusive. We always need to come together in the spirit of Umoja or unity and kind of push back, fight, and learn together. So thank you, Brother Joe. So let's move on to the third question for Esquire himself, Brian Hetherington. Where can I get information on what my rights are in a particular situation?
So all the resources that Dr. Mohammed and Attorney Carson have pointed out are sources for you, or sources that you can point you in good directions. There is also a ton of information that is out there from reliable sources on the internet and available from government agencies that can help you. The state, for example, the state education department has extensive resources for parents of kids with disabilities about what those kids' educational rights are. The State Division of Human Rights has considerable information available on their webpage about people's civil rights and how to enforce them through the Division of Human Rights processes, and up and down, the organizations. Government officials, your elected officials, the people who are supposed to serve you, their offices can often both intercede on your behalf and point you to resources that are reliable ones. Obviously, everything on the internet is not reliable. And so it's really a matter of finding the reliable resources out there. Empire Justice, where I used to work, has resources available on their website on a number of anti-poverty issues. And I want to follow up for a second on the question about neglect and suggest that people think about going upstream, because yes, neglect often is confused with poverty and is a result of a lack of resources. And yet, here in New York State, our public assistance levels have not been raised in over a decade. And then we get shocked, just shocked, when parents are unable to meet some of the basic needs of their children. And so I think, we could cut down on the number of neglect complaints if we were to actually try to make the income for low income people more adequate, either by raising the public assistance levels or, we've had a wonderful experiment here in Rochester on universal basic income. And guess what? It works. It works to make people's lives better, to help them provide better for their families, to help them advance themselves educationally, and to provide security. And the Rochester experiment had the same results as well over 20 other experiments throughout the nation. So we could get real radical and move to universal basic income instead of these needs-based public assistance programs, which are very costly to administer. So there are lots of things that we can do here to make lives better, and this era that we're in will pass. Dr. King famously said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. What he didn't say is it's a smooth curve. It's not a smooth curve. It's two steps forward, one step back, two steps back, one step forward, and we need to put the push on bending that curve, bending the curve towards justice, and doing everything in our power to advocate for real justice, not just crumbs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, indeed. So we'll actually go to the closing comments. So every panelist, we would like you to just kind of provide your closing ideas, takeaways, perhaps even call to action comments to conclude our great panel discussion today by these amazing minds and amazing attendees that had amazing questions. So we'll start off with Dr. Leslie Myers-Smalls. What are your concluding thoughts?
So as we close, I just want to remind everyone of something really vitally important. Rights aren't abstract. They live in our neighborhoods, they live in our schools, in our families, and in every single interaction that we have when we're interacting with systems of power. Knowledge is protection, courage is action, and solidarity is our strength. Folks, we cannot afford to be silent, uninformed, or disconnected. Not now, not during this time, not in this moment. Our responsibility is to keep learning, Our responsibility is to keep advocating and to keep building structures where fairness isn't optional, it's expected. My prayer and my commitment is that we continue walking together with clarity, compassion, and courage. Because when we rise together, we just don't survive uncertain times, we transform them. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Muhammad, your concluding thoughts.
Thank you very much for everyone for the opportunity to be on the panel and listen. I put out a call to the community as we've talked today, and as Dr. Myers-Small just mentioned, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, knowledge is power, and also relationships and unity is power, and that's where change comes. From the moment as a very young slave, Frederick Douglass sought out to learn and gain knowledge, and we see the impact that he had on changing our nation and the world. So as we go forward, if there's opportunities to share information, there's opportunities to learn from those that may be outside of our social circles, I implore everybody to go forward and do that. We're coming from a position of strength. And thank you for mentioning, Brian, we're living in a season of tumult and turbulence, but God willing, this too shall come to pass. Thank you.
Sir Ashe and Attorney Hetherington, your concluding thoughts. Wait, can you hear me? Brian,
I'm sorry, I was still muted. They have now allowed me to unmute. I don't want to plow the ground with a duller furrow than was used by our two previous concluders. But I want to say this. I think that we are in a time when it is critical that we do not acquiesce and give up because that's what they want us to do. And we don't want to simply fight for what was, but to fight for what our people really need. And to have a clear vision of the future state that we would like to see in our community, in our state, and in our nation. And I think it's really important to understand the power of individual stories of injustice that are being, played out in our state and our nation and our community. The Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty organization is now collecting those kind of stories to try to move poverty. And I think, one of the things that really has always struck me is how powerful stories of injustice are in terms of bringing about social change. And I would encourage people who have, faced injustice to contribute their stories. And a number of the organizations in the community that are part of the anti-poverty agenda are collecting them and funneling them on to the anti-poverty agenda folks. So I would encourage people to contribute and tell your stories because that's where the real change of heart is going to occur. It's not going to occur on these broad principles of democracy and stuff like that. It's going to occur when people see the injustice, just like they did, during the children's marches in Birmingham when Bull Connor got the dogs and the fire hoses out, and white America couldn't close its eyes to what was going on. Well, we have to create an environment where people can't close their eyes to the injustice and actually are willing to take actions to end it.
And Dr. Cross, your concluding thoughts.
Yes, as we close, I want people to walk away thinking about the harm of overreporting families to CPS. when a child is not being harmed or in imminent danger. I do believe that we have enough resources and trust and community within our community to support families in ways that does not expose them to systemic trauma. And very much like Mayor Johnson stated, we can't keep our mouths shut. And so I think it's telling that families are being investigated without needing to know, without knowing their rights or being informed of their rights. And I think that we need to be using our voices to support and protect our community's most vulnerable families.
Indeed, my people, indeed. Thank you, Dr. Cross. And I'll conclude with Frederick Douglass. We got to put Fred out there. Find out just what a people will quietly submit to. You'll have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed on them. Asante Sana to all the panelists for your great ideas and your presence and profound thoughts. Thanks for all attendees for coming through, listening, asking questions, and just being present. Please spread the word. And remember, we're better when we're connecting with each other through the knowledge that we've obtained. And enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're attending, enjoy the rest of the conference. I am Craig Carson. Thanks for your time.